Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner.
How are you, sir?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
I'm good. This is Hans speaking, isn't it?
Correctamundo.
Okay. Hope you're had a good Christmas and New Year celebrations.
Not bad, not bad. Yourself?
Yeah, nice and quiet. We didn't do a whole lot, didn't have to go anywhere, so it was nice.
Those are the best ones.
Yes, sir. I agree. Well, good morning, Miss Valencia. I see you talking. I don't hear you.
Oh,
There you are. Now
can you hear me now?
Yep. First time I've seen you without a mask.
Oh, yeah. Good morning and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Commissioner Maestas is waving to us all and to everybody to get out of his room.
Maybe one day you all will join me here in the hearing room.
Yeah, we have to change our agenda. It says Zoom only.
Well, I hope everybody had a happy new year and Merry Christmas.
And you as well, Commissioner Maestas. You as well.
The snow we got was very nice surprise.
Yeah, I heard you guys got like 4 inches there in Santa Fe.
We did good.
Yeah, that's great. We got a dusting, lots of wind, you know. It just blew the snow through your house. That's about it.
Anybody want to mention their best Christmas gift that they received? Come on. Your best Christmas gift.
Coming back to have a meeting with my fellow commissioners at the PRC.
That's
Do I
right
know how
up
to
there with
suck
the
up or
Jelly of the
what?
Month Club.
So is everyone in good spirits?
I don't have any spirits with me. There we go.
All right, everyone. It's 9:30. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to 2022. My name is Joseph Maestas. I'm your chairman, and I'll be presiding over the meeting. And so I'd like to call this meeting to order. Mike Smith, are you there for
Yes,
roll call?
yes, I am. I will
All
call the
right.
roll. Commissioner Maestas. Commissioner Fishman,
Here.
Commissioner Hall,
Here.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, I'm not seeing a response from Commissioner Vicente Aguilar. Commissioner Byrd.
Present.
We have 4 commissioners. That constitutes a quorum for purposes of the Open Meeting Act and the commission's authority under the statutes that govern the commission's power to conduct a meeting.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to ask our new vice chair, Commissioner Cynthia Hull, to lead us in the pledge, in both pledges.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Welcome.
Before we proceed to our action items, I'd like us to observe a moment of silence for some of the losses that we've experienced as an agency family and basically as a state. We know that the Omicron is pervasive again, and we're still experiencing sickness and death across the state of New Mexico. As many of you know, I lost my mother over the holiday. And also, for those of you that don't know, our own Danielle Jimenez lost her only child, her son, 2 days after Christmas. So if you could just join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Let's move on to consideration and approval of the agenda. Members of the commission, what's your pleasure? Any changes, or do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Vice Chair Hall. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I will.
Okay, we have a second from Commissioner Byrd. Any discussion on the motion? All right, Mike Smith, take the roll.
Commissioner Fishman,
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner
Aye.
Vicente Aguilar. I'm not sure she's in attendance.
Aye.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar is in attendance for purposes of the minutes. Good morning.
Michael,
Yes,
I'm here.
yes, I just asked that the minutes reflect that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Maestas,
Aye.
the agenda is approved by a vote of 5-0.
Thanks, Mike. Sarah, do we have any special guests?
Hi, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. We do not have any special guests this morning, but we do have one public commenter who is going to be calling in by phone. His name is Albert Shirley. Mr. Shirley, are you on the call? One last call for Albert Shirley. Are you on the call? Not hearing a response, I'm guessing we can proceed.
If he, if he does call in, just let me know and we'll squeeze him into the agenda.
Yes, sir.
Right. Yes, go ahead. Anyway, let's proceed. Before we go on to consideration and approval of minutes, I wanted to make a special presentation to Stephen Fishman. He is our immediate past chair, and he represents District 5. It's not easy oftentimes to do this job, but when you have to chair the board, there's an additional burden that goes along with it. And oftentimes when leaders move on, it's like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. And I don't believe in that when it comes to public service. And so I did pass the hat and got some contributions. No, I'm just kidding. This is from our agency budget. We have a small token of our appreciation, Commissioner Fishman, for your leadership as our chairman in 2021. So I've got a plaque here. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's a plaque with a gavel, and I'm going to read the inscription on this. And obviously, it would have been ideal to present this to Commissioner Fishman in person, but we know why for obvious reasons. But just allow me to read the inscription here on this plaque. It says, "The New Mexico Public Regulation Commission presents to Commissioner Stephen Fishman, District 5, in recognition of his service as Commission Chair 2021. So put your hands together or click, or I don't know what you do on Zoom, but round of applause for Stephen Fishman for his service as chair.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Byrd.
Thank you. Good deal. Would you mind getting up and bringing that to the camera? Many of us may never have the opportunity to see it. And so we all get to see what Commissioner Fishman is. A little higher right there. Perfect. Oh, that's cool. Very nice. It's actually got a gavel on it. Neat.
We
Well
left the
done.
plastic on because, when you buy that new couch, you don't want it to get stained and you kind of leave the plastic on it. So we're going to leave the plastic on the plaque.
Nobody gets to see
Oh,
it.
well done. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Byrd. Any comments on Commissioner Fishman? And, it can be lighthearted too.
Well, just let me say thank you. I really appreciate it. Last meeting, I think everybody was just very generous with their kind comments, and very thoughtful of you all to put that plaque there. It's going to go on my wall, and I have to check out the plastic to see if I ever want to take it off, or if I want to just have that nice new never sat in look.
Yeah. Easier to dust with that plastic on it.
Yeah, that's true.
Any other commissioners have any parting shots to our outgoing chair for his wonderful job? Anyone else?
Yeah, don't let the door hit you on the.
Don't
Mr.
worry. For today's meeting, I put extra stuffing in the back of my chair.
Well done, Commissioner Fishman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Hall.
so I
Vice
would
Chair.
just like to say that, well, he's not chair anymore. He's not gone. And I expect the same quality of, analysis and humor and repartee that we have enjoyed from Commissioner Fishman as a chairperson to continue. So your standards are still high, Commissioner Fishman. I mean, the standard we expect from you is still, the standard of performance is still very high.
And damn, I was going to check out, but now you said that, And I still have to do my work.
And be funny.
Thank you.
Hey, well, just remember that high water mark. Now I'm the skipper, so let's see how low we can go.
Looking forward to your skippering.
Anyway, thank you all, and thank you again, Commissioner Fishman, for your leadership. And your plaque is here when you're ready to pick it up.
Thank
All
you.
right, let's move on. Sarah, has the public commenter logged on yet? We'll give him another opportunity if he's on the call.
I don't see him, but Mr. Shirley, Albert Shirley, are you on the call? One more call for Albert Shirley.
All right, why don't we move on, Sarah? And again, if he does come on, let me know.
Will do.
All right, so let's move on to item 6, consideration and approval of prior meeting minutes. These are the minutes of the December 1st, 2021 open meeting. What's the pleasure of the
Mr. Chair.
commission? Commissioner Byrd.
Thank you, sir. I may have a correction. Item number 3, which is under the consideration approval of the agenda. There was two motions because of a correction. Anyway, on the second motion, it says Commissioner Hall moved and also seconded her motion. Since we're not under the guise of are you being served, I believe that second was also by myself, Commissioner Byrd, to approve the agenda as amended. If Mr. Boaz has noted that, I am willing to move the minutes as amended.
And I will second.
There's Mr. Boaz. Thank you, sir. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
And thanks for all the good work, Carl.
It's good to
You're
see your
welcome.
face, though.
Okay,
Thank
all right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's it for me.
So I'm sorry, our Zoom went down for a brief period. So were there accepted amendments to the minutes?
Yeah, did you hear my comments, sir?
No, the Zoom went out here.
Okay. So I had noted that under item 3, consideration approval of the agenda, the note there was that the motion was moved and seconded by Commissioner Hall. And I pointed out that I believe I was the second on the motion, not Commissioner Hall. And I threw in a reference to an old British television show, Are You Being Served?, that we are unanimous in this. I moved the motion as amended for the minutes, and Commissioner Fishman has seconded, and Mr. Boaz acknowledged the correction. I believe you're up to date, sir.
Okay,
So
so
I
do we
guess-
have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is that you,
And
Commissioner
seconded.
Byrd?
Yes, sir.
So who seconded the motion?
Commissioner Fishman.
Commissioner Fishman. All right, any discussion on the motion? Mike, take the roll.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas,
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd,
Aye.
and Commissioner Fishman.
Hi.
By a vote of 5-0, the open meeting minutes for December 1st, 2021 are approved as amended.
Thank you. Let's move on to annual policy matters, consideration and potential approval of the 2022 meeting schedule. Who is presenting? Is that you, Mike?
I'm just trying to bring that up myself, actually. Okay, I've got it up. Yeah, I think this is a meeting that calendar, excuse me, that was prepared by Isaac in our office based on the request by the commission to have a calendar identifying what days it would conduct, or rather it would cancel its meetings, and these cancellations that are put on here in orange are based on the commission's previous proposal to not have open meetings on weeks where there are 3-day weekends. And I think that's accounts for the majority of those day cancellations. There might be additional cancellations as the year goes on and commissioners determine to attend various events, and then we would issue an updated calendar.
Any questions regarding the proposed 2022 meeting calendar? Any questions at all? If not, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Vice Chair Hall. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Byrd. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. Mike, take the roll, please.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Fishman,
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd,
Aye.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas.
Aye.
The calendar is approved by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you, Mike. Let's move on to a resolution 1-5-22B. 22A, adoption of annual open meeting policy and notice for 2022. Is this you, Mike, again?
Yes.
Okay.
I am trying to
Go
bring
ahead.
up the resolution. It basically is the annual meeting policy. There are a number of changes that are on the red line document that was supplied to you. The principal basis for most of those revisions are to clarify certain issues that have come up in the language in the past, as well as to accommodate the commission's continuing use of the virtual meeting protocol through Zoom. It provides for both the ability to have meetings by virtual meeting and open meetings in person, should the commission be able to do that in the future without having to come back and readopt another policy. It might be more effective if if any of the commissioners have specific questions about the revisions. I did this morning go through this again, and I did have a couple of insertions that I think should be made, and we did make some after our general counsel meeting yesterday, which were circulated to the commissioners. But I would, in the first paragraph, excuse me, the first page of page, on the first page of the policy on page 1, at the bottom of page 1.
Mr. Chair, excuse me.
Vice Chair Hall.
Could we please have the document put up? I have printing problems this weekend, and this week, and I wasn't able to print it out, so I just read it on my computer, but I can't see it in both places, and I'd like to see where he's referring to. Because I noticed in that document, there were a number of typos or omissions that made sometimes the meaning not clear. So would it be possible to show that on the shared screen?
I
Great,
think Isaac's doing that now.
thank you.
So I guess I'll just sort of go through some of the changes. In the first paragraph, we just made a clarification that towards the bottom of the paragraph, that the ability to attend open meetings pertain or listen to open meetings relates to the proceedings of the commission. We did eliminate the words discussions, deliberations, because to make that consistent with the commission's ability to go into closed session to conduct deliberations if it chooses to do so under the Open Meeting Act. We also inserted a provision that states that ability to attend an open meeting physically is subject to the physical space limitations of the location in which the meeting is held. Just to clarify that. The second paragraph We just inserted, this relates to when the commission reconvenes meetings. Once it begins a meeting on one date to a date subsequent. Just to point out that the commission does not adjourn and will specify the date, time, place for the continuation of that meeting. That's just consistent with the provisions of the Open Meeting Act. We did indicate that also that we would post the place for the reconvened meeting on the commission's website. And if the meeting was held in person near the door of the location where the meeting was originally held, there you see we eliminated a reference to room 406 of the Para building, as that's obviously no longer applicable. And I think there's 7 more of those corrections throughout the body of this document. Moving to the 3rd paragraph, again, we removed the words deliberations. And further down, we stated that, sorry, I'm trying to change my screen here, stated that where appropriate, and I would insert the additional language under section 8817 NMSA 1978 and rule 1.2.3 NMAC, which govern ex parte communications. So it would state that where appropriate under those provisions, any party to a proceeding that is identified on the agenda on the agenda for a commission meeting may also request to attend the meeting telephonically or via virtual communications platform by emailing a request to the Commission's Office of General Counsel. And that's basically just to clarify that that's not an open ability for anybody to attend. It's only where that is appropriate under the ex parte provisions. Moving down into subsection A, we just inserted some language about the continuation of non-adjourned meetings or reconvened meetings that we're talking about, and put some clarifying language in here. So it state, with the exception of a special or emergency open meeting or continuation of a non-adjourned meeting as provided here in the commission conducts regularly scheduled open meetings, regularly weekly meetings. That we conduct those on every Wednesday unless another day is necessary of each week. So that just provides the scheduling. Again, the 2nd paragraph in section A just provides a qualification that other times might require open meetings to start at a different time than 9:30. At the bottom of that paragraph, we added the provision that meetings that are noticed to be held through virtual communications platform will not be subject to weather delays, because obviously people would not be attending the meeting in person, or the public at least would not. The next paragraph states that the commission will post notice of the specific date, time, and place of each open meeting at least 72 hours prior to the meeting. And it states that notice shall be posted on the commission's website and provides the address, the web address for where that notice can be accessed. Right now it says, and outside the location where the meeting will be held, if the meeting is to be held in person. I actually would propose eliminating the last portion of that for the physical posting. And that's because the personnel at the PRC who handle the posting, we had a discussion about that yesterday, and those persons are working remotely, and the Open Meetings Act itself does not require a physical posting at the location where the meeting is to be held. The Open Meetings Act actually provides that the language is that the affected body shall determine at least annually in a public meeting what notice for a public meeting is reasonable when applied to that body. Therefore, given the change in our circumstances, I'm proposing that we would eliminate the last portion, and the posting of notice would take place on the commission's website instead. As you see, the rest of that paragraph still provides, in compliance with the Open Meeting Act, that we would be providing notice to broadcast stations that are licensed by the FCC, newspapers of general circulation that have provided a written request for notice of the commission's meetings, as well as any other persons who have requested notice of the commission's open meetings. And basically the protocol when we issue a notice of open meeting is that an email is sent to that list with a copy of the open meeting agenda, as well as to the news stations, and it is posted on the commission's website. Moving further down, for the regular weekly meetings in subsection B, we basically have had issues, I guess, in the past where we sort of have changed the different agenda sections at times. And so what we did is we qualified that we included the word language, rather generally in the language, so that states regular weekly meetings shall generally follow the following agenda. And we've conformed that to the way that the commission's current agenda is set up. So I just want, you see a lot of crossouts there, but that's basically all that's doing. Moving further down. I think in subsection C, which governs special and emergency open meetings, we've just added language again about the virtual platform and then where the notice would be posted. At the very bottom of that page, again, is another provision that states that meetings that are held solely through the virtual communication platform shall not be shall not be subject to state office closures or delays. Moving on to subsection D. And this governs commission formal hearings before the commission. The main thing that's substantively changed there is towards the bottom of the first paragraph, it states that the commission may provide a procedural schedule, including but not limited to the filing of testimony, exhibits, and order of witnesses. That's just a clarification. Next paragraph, again, we have another provision that states that virtual meetings will not be subject to closures or delays. Sorry, I'm just going through here. Closed meetings is subsection E, and that remains principally the same until the last paragraph. And and again, that just provides basically that notice of the closed meeting would be made on the commission's website. And again, we would, I'm just noticing here, we would have to strike out that language about posting it at the location where the meeting is to be held in person, consistent with what I said before. And the last sentence includes a clarification that's come up a few times, which states that at any time during an open meeting of the commission may close the meeting to the public as permitted under NMSA 1978, section 1015(1)H and I, which is the provisions of the Open Meeting Act that allow the commission to conduct a closed session, such as for matters such as personnel matters and deliberations on adjudicated cases. And it states that that is so even if the closed session is not specifically listed on the posted agenda. Moving down, the minutes basically stay the same. The section I, we're trying to come up with language that's more consistent. So we've renamed it from remote meetings to virtual meetings. Going down to subsection J, the public comment sections, provisions. In the second paragraph, we've added language that states that when a meeting is noticed to be held solely through a virtual communication platform. Individuals wishing to provide public comment must sign up in advance by contacting the Office of General Counsel or other designated person at the Commission. Specific instructions for how to sign up to provide public comment at the virtual meeting will be included on that meeting's agenda. In general, individuals may sign up to comment at a virtual meeting by contacting Isaac Sullivan Leshin at his address and phone number at least 2 hours prior to the start of the meeting. But if other sign-up instructions are provided on the agenda, they should be followed instead. This conforms with the practice that we have been following since we've gone to the virtual format. So we're including this in the annual policy. We have provisions in the next paragraph that govern public comment. And as we had the other in recent cases where we've had a lot of sign up, we have this provision that states that public comment by an individual or entity shall be limited to no more than 3 minutes unless the commission acts to decrease or extend the time period. If the number of individuals on desiring to provide comment would exceed the allotted 30-minute period, the chair may limit individual remarks to a shorter time period, including but not limited to 1 minute or less. And that's just reflecting the practice that we've had recently. It doesn't actually make a substantive change. In the next paragraph, this relates to the subject matter of public comments. And basically, the existing language states that the subject matter of public comments shall be relevant to matters within the commission's jurisdiction. Public comment will not be permitted on matters that should be addressed appropriately as the subject of an informal or formal complaint before the commission or on pending rulemaking proceedings before the commission once the opportunity for public comment in those proceedings has closed. This clarifies that public comment by a party to a proceeding or by any person or entity with a direct material interest in the outcome of a proceeding pending before the commission will not be permitted where the comment concerns matters at issue in such proceeding. And it states that the commission will determine what constitutes a material interest. I would remove the language in the outcome just to make it read a little better. This, I think you've all heard me address this a number of times. I believe Commissioner Bissett. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
I believe Commissioner Maestas is muted.
oh, my question is, can someone that is not a party to the case, can they make a comment on a case that is being appealed to the Supreme Court?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, this specific provision does not actually address that specific question or that specific instance. In a case that has been appealed to the Supreme Court, I believe that in those instances, a case is not fully resolved when it has been appealed to the Supreme Court. And I believe that the commission should continue to follow its provisions about ex parte communications.
Michael, my question is, an individual that is not a party to the case, can they make a comment during the public comment period? I'm sorry, public comment section of the agenda.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the prohibition under ex parte extends to parties and their representatives, and that representatives and agents is defined by statute and our rule pretty expansively. This provision addresses persons who are not necessarily agents of the party or representatives of the party, but they are persons who have a material interest in the outcome of the case. And we've had this come up in a number of instances where you have, say, a purchase power agreement is up for consideration by the commission for approval. And the only entity that has applied for approval is the utility. But the entity that would be building the facility that would be providing energy through this purchase power agreement under a contract with the utility, that's the matter at issue in front of the commission, doesn't actually participate in the case. They don't become a party to the case. And then the issue has come up, well, can they go around and basically speak to commissioners, or can they go up and make public comment about the case, which is going to directly affect their financial or other material interests without any kind of control over the communications that they make. My advice to the commission has always been, I think that these type of communications should be restricted, and that's basically what this provision would do.
Michael, I understand that you're talking about the purchase power agreement. My question is just a regular citizen making a comment about a case that's being appealed to the Supreme Court. Are they allowed?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, yes, I don't think there's nothing that would prohibit an ordinary citizen from making comment about a case that's either being adjudicated in front of the commission or that's on appeal.
They are allowed, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Proceed, Mike.
The following sentence after that basically also states that comments should address the commission, the business of the commission. And the next sentence provides that complaints, and I would take out comments because that's probably a little over expansive, concerning the performance of individual employees of the agency should be directed to the attention of the chief of staff outside the public meeting. It also, we retain the language that states that the chair shall retain the right to stop any speaker who raises an issue that is not under the commission's jurisdiction or is subject to the restrictions above. The provision about complaints regarding individual employees, having those directed to the chief of staff, is consistent with the provisions in the commission's, I'm sorry, in section 8.8.7, I believe it is, which provides that the chief of staff is the entity at the, or the, rather the supervisor at the commission who is responsible for directing the performance of the commission staff rather than the commission. So this basically directs those complaints to the appropriate person at the commission to handle those. And I think that's pretty much the entirety of the substantive changes that are made to this open meeting policy. If there are any questions, I can address those.
Any questions for Mike? And just to recap, we do have some minor amendments that Mike offered to the resolution as proposed. Any questions for Mike?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Byrd.
thank you. Good morning, Mr. Smith. Back up in the section about the agenda, it says shall generally. Should shall be replaced with may or will, being that shall has a connotation that it will only be this way. I know you've added generally, but shouldn't shall be replaced with may or will?
Give me the page and paragraph we're talking about.
Isaac has it up. It's regular weekly meetings, item B. And it says regular weekly meetings shall generally follow the following agenda. Shall follow the following agenda. That might be an issue too. But should we remove shall and replace it with may or will is my question.
So I recognize that there's somewhat of an inconsistency in a command that then qualifies itself. So I think we could change that, certainly change that to may generally, or will
Yeah.
generally.
That's my only comment at this time. And I don't follow the following agenda. Well, I don't know if that sounds funny, but anyway, that wasn't my issue. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? So we're going to change that shall to may because I think Commissioner Bird's correct. It has, for example, temporal potential agenda items like legislative issues, discussion and approval of legislative issues, which isn't always a standing agenda item. So I support the change. Any other questions for Michael Smith? I guess, Mike, I was wondering, we eliminated any reference to the physical address of our building. You know, I think folks out there know now that we have a new office building. And about a month ago, we had a gentleman come in to the office and observe the meeting here in the hearing room. And so I guess it's clear that our office is open to the public and the public can attend physically in person, you know, these meetings here in the hearing room. Does this policy, I guess, allow for that, for them to visit in person and make public comments kind of from the gallery? How versatile is this policy?
I think it is versatile in that sense. I don't think certainly anything prohibits that. I'm just trying to think of where it would be appropriate to insert the location of the commission meetings when we're holding them virtually, and at the same time we do have some people attending and the public has the ability to attend in person at the Palace Avenue address. Because obviously the commission practice. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Instead of maybe doing that now, maybe if you can look at that and see if we can provide for including the physical address of the current office, unless we're making a statement that all of our meetings throughout the entire calendar year are going to be virtual.
I think actually the language in the first paragraph is sufficient because it states that the location of such open meetings shall be noticed on the meeting agenda when published and posted on the commission website. So when the commission is conducting a virtual meeting, I suppose what we can do is make a provision that states that the members adds language to the notice of open meeting agenda, providing that persons can attend at the address on Palace Avenue. I've already forgotten exactly our exact street number at Palace Avenue, but we can insert that on the actual agenda.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Byrd.
Our agendas currently state in the heading there that meeting taking place through Zoom only. Prior to us going Zoom only, it had our location put on there. So it would have had of our address and the room number. So probably in the future, it'll say taking place via Zoom and in person at, and then there will be the address that they can attend in person.
I just prefer that. I'd prefer that this policy be, as we said before, versatile to allow for a hybrid situation for these meetings, that it can be virtual or folks can come in, you know, in person and even make public comment here physically.
Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair Hall.
I agree. I know it's old fashioned, I guess, and but I think we should always leave an avenue for people to know the physical location of where we're having our meeting and make it, accessible and make that knowledge accessible to them so they can come in and be present. We can always impose whatever COVID requirements we want to, COVID protection requirements, but I don't know that anybody ever would come in, but I just feel we're not completely being a public agency if we don't do everything we can to make it available to all types of people in the public. Not everybody has a computer.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. So Mike, you're going to make that change just to provide for the hybrid meeting?
Yes, I guess the question, I may have missed that. Are we saying making a change to the notice on the agenda that we were sending out, or are we talking about making a change in the policy?
Well, making a change in the policy to make it clear that we're going to proceed on a hybrid basis for our meetings. And I think you mentioned you were going to add in the physical location of the address, or I'm sorry, of the office as an option for people to participate in our meetings.
Yeah, I'm looking at the language in the policy. I was thinking that the more appropriate place to put it would be in the notice for the actual meeting that's being held, because that way, so rather than just saying that the meeting will just be taking place through Zoom only, it would say that the meeting is taking place through Zoom and the public may attend at this location. And that's in part because if we do go back to doing meetings in person more frequently, and the commission decides to have meetings in other places, in various districts like it's done in the past, that's more easily accessible through the specific agenda that is issued. And I think the language in here still does provide for that, because it's, as I said, it states that the location of the meeting will be noticed on the agenda.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Vice Chair Hall.
Well, if the location is only stated on the agenda and the agenda is not physically posted, then the agenda only goes to people using electronic means to receive it. And they are the only people who know the physical location. It's kind of chicken and egg thing. So, it seems to me posting on the door, even though it must be, inconvenient for somebody, can't be all that inconvenient because, I don't know, but are there days when there is no one in the building, or is there not someone in the building every day? Or at least on days when posting should occur? Because I think we should probably still post. I was a little dismayed to hear about that change, frankly.
Well, the persons who have in the past, or who currently handle the various posting obligations, are not physically present in the building, which creates the issue that we would have to find somebody else to take responsibility for. We'd have to add a third person to take responsibility for posting.
Is that impossible? Is there someone who's there on the appropriate days? I mean, I don't know. You'll have to tell me, but can someone else do that? Just post the physical notice. So
That's something I would have to look into. This issue really kind of came up yesterday, later in the day, while we were having our meeting and going through these issues. And we communicated with Melanie Sandoval in our records bureau, and I did not realize at that time that she was not present in the building, at least not on the day when the notice has to be posted.
Yeah.
So that creates an issue that we'd have to address.
Well, let's do this, folks. I think the last full paragraph on page 2, as Mike said, does provide for identifying the location where the meeting will be held. And again, it's subject to the posting on the commission's website. And Mike, if you could just look into, if it would be feasible to have somebody continue posting our meetings physically here at the office building in the front, on the front door, then perhaps we can revisit this resolution and amend it. But I think right now we're covered in terms of really having our meeting in any location when we choose not to have it virtually.
Right. So, okay, I can do that. And then I can propose some additional or an amendment to the annual meeting policy.
Okay, so we do have some amendments that we've already discussed that Michael outlined. So we have an amended resolution 1-5-22A, which is adoption of our annual open meeting policy and notice for 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve as amended?
Joe, this is Commissioner Fishman.
Yes, Commissioner Fishman.
I had, before we go to that, I had one other comment on material interest. I'm struggling a little bit with that one because it's defined so broadly. It's like the commission could cut off a lot of people who maybe should be able to comment. Not saying that we would, but and I'm wondering if we can define that a little bit more narrowly, Mike, because I think we're thinking of a specific instance of someone who is a contractor on a project that we need to approve, and that essentially, if they were speaking, I think the concern, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that person would essentially be speaking on behalf of the utility because their interests are so closely aligned. Is that our concern there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really that you have a party. It's not, the problem is that under the ex parte provisions, they aren't actually a representative of the utility, of the applicant, but they in essence have a contractual relationship with the applicant, or but it's not necessarily restricted solely to issues where you have contracts. That is kind of the most common instance in which we've had this come up.
Mm-hmm. So all I would ask is, I don't think we need to make an amendment now, but maybe you can give a little thought to see if there's a way you can narrow that a little bit, because I could see some people complaining that they have a legitimate reason to comment, and this material interest might be construed as kind of an excuse for the commission to shut up whoever it wants to shut up. Because, a commission could say, well, gee, a ratepayer, if it affects their rates, that's a material interest. Typically you wouldn't, but someone could, I imagine. So if we could give that a little more thought down the road, and if you can come up with another phraseology, that'd be great. But we don't need to do that now.
And Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I understand that concern, and that's why we put the language in there about that the commission will have the discretion to determine what's the material interest, because we recognize there are various parameters that change from case to case. Generally, I think the ex parte provisions don't include members of the public who are going to be subject to a rate change. I think there's language, if I recall, specifically excluding them from those considerations.
Yeah, I just hate someone to read it and then feel like they can't comment when they could. So that's where I'm coming from. So again, not a big deal, but it's just if we can, if you have an opportunity and we can get a little more precise, that'd be great. If not, this is serviceable for now.
And I can certainly look into that.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Fishman and Mike. Anything else before we?
Yeah,
entertain
Mr.
a
Chair,
motion? Yes, Commissioner Byrd.
I want to go back to the posting issue. Haven't thought about it. Rather than changing our policy to say that there will be something physically posted within the 72-hour time frame, how about, can we just make it an expectation that it will be posted ASAP, and that's as soon as practical? So if it ends up being Monday morning before a staff member puts it on the door, at least it gets up. Because sometimes our agenda doesn't get approved till 6, 7 o'clock Friday night, and somebody would have to make a trip all the way downtown. This way, as soon as somebody comes in Monday morning, it gets put up, and we just not make it a formal policy written down, but an expectation of the commission that staff will get it posted as soon as practical.
Mike, what's your response? Because I think that for the purposes of meeting the requirements of the Open Meetings Act, I think the posting will surely be made 72 hours prior to the meeting. So we're covered
Right.
there. So the subsequent posting of the agenda is not necessarily, a violation of the Open Meetings Act, given that it's already been posted on the website. So is that something we can do?
Yeah, I mean, I think I see what I understand what Commissioner Byrd is thinking about, and we would, I guess, we'd have to put language in qualifying that for purposes of the Open Meeting Act, for purposes of providing notice as required by the Open Meeting Act, notice will consist of posting notice on the Commission's website prior, 72 hours prior to the open meeting. And then we'd have to have some language that states, in addition, the commission, I guess, would make an effort to post the agenda at its place of business I'm trying to think what the language would be.
As soon as practical.
Yeah, as soon as practical after formal notice has been issued, or something to that effect.
Or will be posted as soon as normal business hours resume.
I mean, the key what we don't want is if this is intended to be flexible, the Open Meeting Act has a strict 72-hour deadline, so we don't want this to constitute the required open notice of the open
Right.
meeting.
Well, that's why I said we don't change our written policy here. We just add an expectation from us that it will be posted and it not be in our policy at all, one way or the other. We just leave our policy the way it currently states. The 72 hours will be met here, but later, whenever it's practical, we'll get it on the door. And we just as a courtesy to the people of New Mexico, we're already meeting the requirements of the Opens Meeting Act. This is just in addition to, outside of our policy requirements.
Mr. Chair,
Vice Chair Hall.
I don't know if that really works. I mean, I understand where Commissioner Byrd is trying to get to compliance with the act, but the whole purpose of posting it physically is to reach those people who don't have a computer or read papers or know to read papers. So for them, it's the only posting they have. And I'm not trying to make problems for staff or anything, but I just think we need to be non-discriminatory in the way we're reaching different members of the community. I don't know if anybody really goes and looks on the door, but I don't know. I know in the past, there have been other notices that we've had posted on the door, even one pursuant to federal law. And those requirements are there for a reason. So I'm a little uncomfortable with saying we've met the Open Meetings Act by the electronic means, because I think that would just introduce a kind of an opportunity and maybe develop a mentality that the door posting is really not so important. I mean, when you think about the fact that, it would otherwise cover a whole weekend when somebody who was interested in a meeting, would have that much more time to go look on the door if they had no other means, then doesn't seem quite fair. I don't mean to be a stickler about this, but notice is something I think is kind of a fundamental duty of government agencies. That's all.
I think we need to move on. What I would propose is that we take action with the amendments that we've agreed to thus far. And if there's any, major developments in terms of the pandemic where we would be willing to revisit this, then I think we can take maybe more proactive steps to post the notice physically and establish, I think, our meetings to accommodate in-person attendance. But I think right now everyone is pretty much Zooming these days. So I think this handles the status quo. We don't know what's going to happen with this pandemic, but I think we're covered in terms of noticing the public. It's not ideal, Commissioner Hall. But I think Mike said he would get with staff to see if there's a way we can continually to physically posting notice, but our compliance is through the website posting. And so I think we're covered there. Is that okay with everyone? Can we proceed with the vote with the changes we've agreed to so far?
Yeah.
All right. Do I hear a motion to approve as amended?
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair Hall. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
A second by Commissioner Fishman. Any discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none. Michael?
Commissioner Byrd,
Aye.
Commissioner Fishman,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas.
Aye.
The open meeting agenda is approved by a vote of 5-0.
Thanks, Mike. Let's move on to resolution 1-5-22B as in boy, adoption of annual Commissioner Code of Conduct policy for 2022. Mike, I presume you're up.
Yes, this is actually a sort of I don't want to say it's pro forma, but there are no revisions to this code of conduct. This has been the practice of the commission for, I hesitate to hazard a guess as to the number of years, but for a number of years, it has been the format that the commission has used. And so the commission adopts this each year. And really, as I said, nothing has changed. So I stand for questions.
Any questions from Mike regarding the code of conduct resolution? If not, do I hear a motion to approve as presented?
So
So
moved.
moved.
All right.
Second.
We had a motion by Commissioner Fishman and a second by Vice Chair Hall. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. Mike, take the roll.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Fishman,
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
The Commissioner Code of Conduct Policy for 2022 and State Oath of Ethical Conduct is approved by a vote of 5-0.
Thanks, Mike. And I wanted to let everyone know I completed my required professional development hours for ethics for first-year commissioners. So Wayne, you don't have to dock my pay, which I think is one of the sanctions in the statute. So just to let you guys know, I am now certified and out of trouble. All right, so let's move.
We are so relieved. You don't know how much anxiety we'd had over vacation. And I'm really upset that you didn't tell us until after vacation. So we were worrying that whole time.
Well, I expect a full graduation ceremony. All right,
Will
let's
do.
move on. Yes, Commissioner Byrd.
Oh, nothing.
Okay, sorry. All right, let's move on to item 8, update on selection of State Rural Universal Service Fund Administrator. Russell Fisk.
Good morning,
You're
Mr.
on.
Chairman, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Good morning.
Okay.
I can hear you.
This will be a very brief update. As you know, the SRUSF, the State Rural Universal Service Fund, has an administrator. This is provided for in the Rural Telecommunications Act. The commission is allowed under the act to pay an administrator to collect and disperse funds on a monthly basis for the fund and use money that is within the fund, money that's raised from the per connection surcharge to pay the administrator. We hire administrators in 4-year periods because there's no specific, because the general rules for contracting using public money or budgetary money or do not apply here. There really isn't any specific type of procedure required. So the commission's practice, our ASD's practice has been to just follow those general rules anyway. So there's an RFP process that's done every 4 years. I'm not involved in that. Renata conducted, ASD conducted that process, and there's no big change. There's no change at all. In fact, for the last 4 years, Vantage Point Solutions, which is formerly GV&W Consulting, has been our fund administrator. They've been fantastic. Not only do they do the general work of collecting and dispersing money, collecting from the contributing carriers, which there are a couple hundred of them, and dispersing to those who receive funds from the fund. They do that, of course, but they also have helped us with all kinds of special, special items like the report to the legislature that we did this last fall. They helped with tables. They've been fantastic. Anyway, they have been selected again through the RFP process, and I can take any questions. Renata is also available, but it's pretty straightforward process. So I'll take any questions if anyone has any.
Thanks, Russell. Any questions for Russell? Russell, I have one. So we don't need to approve this contract as a commission?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. This is a type of contract that the commission actually is usually not involved in. We just update, we just let the commission know what's happened. Meaning because it's not budget money, it comes from the SRUSF. We really, there's really no choice. We must have a fund administrator for practical reasons, and we're allowed to under the law. And since we use this basic RFP process, which I think generally in the past selects, there are a few firms around, nationwide firms like Vantage Point, that actually do this kind of administration for a lot of different funds, state funds. And so Vantage Point is one of them that's very experienced. And so, yeah, there's no approval by the commission. It's something usually that's done at a lower level generally.
So Russell, just to follow up, I thought the statute gives the commission authority to select the administrator. And I would think that this is the form of selecting the administrator, is approving a new contract. So am I interpreting, and I don't have the statute in front of me, but I read it, a long time ago, but I thought that this commission does have authority to select the administrator for the Universal Service Fund.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Chairman. In the particular section of the subsection of the Rural Telecom Act, it says the commission shall select a neutral third party administrator, et cetera. But that, of course, can be delegated, and that's been the general understanding in the past, is that ASD has handled the RFP just using the same procedure every 4 years. Now, if the commission would like to be, involved in the process in the future, that's something obviously we could discuss. It's just this is the procedure we followed in the past, is that the commission has delegated that responsibility to ASD.
So Russell, I guess, at the beginning of every year, we do the open meetings resolution. We approve the meeting calendar as we've just done. But shouldn't we maybe approve a formal delegation of authority for things like this? And I don't know if it exists, if we have an approved policy with a delegation of authority where statute really gives us the authority, but we delegate it. Do we have such a delegation of authority policy?
Mr. Chairman, that's a good question. I will look into whether we have a formal written delegation. That's a very good question. And I can get back to the commission on that at next week's open meeting. Yeah, I'm not sure what we do have on file. That's a very good question. I'll look into that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Vice Chair Hall.
I'd like to understand a little bit more about how we determined that it was okay to delegate it, simply because the language in the statute says the commission shall, select a fund administrator. I'd like to ask Russell to just explain that a little bit more to me. How did we conclude that was okay to delegate?
Well, Commissioner Hall, I wasn't present during discussions of the delegation. That's why I'm not familiar with whether we do have a formal written delegation. But anytime a statute thing, unless it's a procedural statute that's saying the commission, shall vote or vote, something like that. Anytime, and pretty much any of our statutes, when it says the commission shall do something, it's understood the agency itself, the commission can delegate duties generally to employees of the agency. So that's generally understood. So there's basically the ASD is doing it on behalf of the commission, just as the commission is not involved in every decision that's made on the commission's behalf on a daily, weekly basis, because they're the sort of I want to say routine items or something like that. They can always be delegated to some other portion of the agency. But I can certainly look into the history of how this became a delegated issue and whether we have a formal delegation resolution or policy, and bring that information back to the commission next week.
I'd appreciate that. I mean, it's been some time ago. I don't think it was during the time I was a commissioner, but maybe when I was in general counsel's office. I recall the commission discussing which contract to pick. There were several parties bidding for this work, or maybe they had decided they wanted to change. I don't quite remember, but it seems to me the commission has had conversations in the past on the bench about who to pick. So I'd be interested to know what happened. How come we changed? I'm not saying I have any problem with this contractor or even really any problem with the process, but I'd just like to have some further assurances that we're doing the right thing, given that the statute has the word shall in it right after the word commission. And, with other contracts it might not be so specific. So just wanted to check.
Commissioner Hall, absolutely. I think I do recall an instance such as you're thinking of. I remember at one time there were one or two commissioners who were interested in possibly using someone within the state, using a company within the state. But the thing is, what I recall is it never progressed any farther. The commissioners really didn't push it, and we just went on with the same method of same RFP process. But yeah, it has been discussed. It's never really come to a head in the sense that I don't recall any commissioner actually requesting that the process be changed. But of course, the commission can consider that. And I would just note again, though, in terms of the legality of delegating the selection authority, that's perfectly within any statute, that's saying these are the commission's duties, to regulate. The commission shall do this. That is understood in an instance like this to mean the whole agency. The commission doesn't have to make every single decision about every area of its regulation. So I just shouldn't worry about that part of it. But I can certainly look into the process of how this delegation came about and come back to the commission with that.
Okay, that's fine. I don't really disagree with you completely anyhow about the delegation authority. Certainly we can do whatever is, necessary and to carry out our mission. But I'd appreciate if you just check on that one point. Thanks.
I will do that.
And then Russell, if I may, I think another reason why I raised this issue is because given the contract amounts here in this case, it certainly would require commission approval. So can a delegation of authority even, I guess I even hate to use the word trump procurement policy that would require commission action?
Mr. Chairman, I will look into that. I think but I'm speculating now. I think the reason is that because this is not budget money, that this does not violate a procurement policy because it's a little different. But I'm going to look into that to how the delegation came about and whether there's any issue there with our procurement policy. This was a procedure that was already in place when I started working with the commission, and so there were never any objections. I never really looked into it, but this is a good time to look into it, and I can do that.
Okay, all right. Anything else? Any other comments? I guess this is just an informational item.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, is Renata.
I just want to note that, part of this going with the RFP process was a recommendation of DFA. It's not public policy, but we did follow the RFP process. So it was a very stringent process. And there was an evaluation committee and there was a scoring criteria based on specifications and business specifications. So I just wanted to note that.
Okay, thank you. And anything else? All right, appreciate the conversation. Let's move on. Thank you, Russell. Let's move on to discussion items. Under item 9, in the matter of potential amendments to Nmprc Rule 570, entitled Governing Cogeneration and Small Power Production, case 20-175-UT. So Judy, is this you?
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Maestas and members of the commission. The reason that this is being brought to you today for an update is that I wanted to bring this as an update in November and December. However, the commission had so many urgent matters that had deadlines. I didn't want this matter, which doesn't have that type of urgent deadline, to interfere. However, it has been a year in this matter since we have issued the NOPR. And I just wanted to briefly, as possible, reflect what has happened in the past year, what the two main issues are, and start refreshing the commission's memory with regard to the terminology and the issues, because this is regarding FERC regulations and the Public Utility Regulatory Policies Act of 1978, known as PURPA. This matter was originally brought in September of 2020, or I believe August 28th, 2020, by EPE, requesting that the commission amend their PURPA rule 17.9.570 to comport with recent amendments. At that time, they were recent to the FERC regulations regarding PURPA. FERC issued FERC order number 872. It revised the FERC regulations in several aspects, but there are only two aspects of the New Mexico rule which require an immediate change and which were part of the NOPR. EPE asked the commission to amend the New Mexico Rule 570 to conform with the new regulations and Order 872, which became effective when published in the Federal Register at the end of December 2020. So in January 2021, the commission issued the NOPR with proposed changes to our Rule 570. And we received initial comments. There was a public hearing held on June 28th, 2021. And I conducted, as the presiding officer, the hearing. And the two main issues in the amended rule and discussed at the public hearing were, first, the formation of a legally enforceable obligation. You may recall that this issue was the subject of a lot of litigation in 2018, 2019, and 2020, when Great Divide Wind sued the commission over the commission's interpretation of the present rule, and the present rule's requirement that in order to form a legally enforceable obligation, the qualifying facility needed to be ready to be interconnected. That issue was the subject of litigation. It went all the way up to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals after the commission prevailed at the New Mexico Federal District Court. But in the interim, FERC changed its rules regarding legally enforceable obligation. And so based upon the commission issuing this NOPR to change the legally enforceable obligation to comport with the new FERC regulations, the 10th Circuit dismissed the appeal of Great Divide to the 10th Circuit. So what does the new FERC rule require for a legally enforceable obligation? It requires that there be a this is from Order 872. I'm quoting: a qualifying facility must demonstrate commercial viability and financial commitment to construct its facility pursuant to criteria developed by the state regulatory authority or non-regulated electric utility as a prerequisite to a qualifying facility obtaining a legally enforceable obligation. Such criteria must be objective and reasonable. In the rule that of the published NOPR, the commission did establish 6 reasonable and objective criteria, and there was a proposed 7th one by PNM and EPE, and I'll just briefly go through the 7. The QF has to have filed an interconnection application. tendered required fees. The QF has to take meaningful steps to obtain site control to construct the entire facility and demonstrate executed agreements. The QF has to have applied for all federal, state, and local permits to operate the facility. Those are the first three. Then number 4, the QF has authorized environmental studies and other actions necessary to support permit and license applications. 5, the QF has obtained or applied for financing of the proposed project as evidenced by a loan application or other types of applications. The QF has to provide the utility with a construction plan and timeline, including cost quotes. And number 7, the QF has to have submitted the self-certification to be as QF to FERC. Now, just the issues here are that all of the utilities and staff generally agree that these are reasonable and objective criteria. Mr. Jason Marks and Mr. Flax Davidson at the public hearing stated that 1, 2, 3, and number 7, the submission of the self-certification were required, but they believe that 4, 5, and 6 were barriers and presented obstacles and were not necessary. So that's the main issue in a nutshell, as quickly as I can do it, regarding legally enforceable obligations. The second issue that you will be needing to decide soon, and I forgot to mention that we have 18 months to complete this rule. So that would be by June of this year. And that's the reason I'm trying to bring this up again, to refresh your memory, so that if anybody has any issues or wants more information gathered on anything, that I and staff could assist you in this. And in fact, if you want to set up a meeting with me individually to talk about this, I'm more than willing to do this. I really did not want to bring a final rule without giving you all the opportunity to know about the issues and think about them and come back to me with questions. But the second big issue is the avoided cost calculation, and the newly adopted FERC regulations permit the state regulatory commissions such as Nmprc to establish avoided costs using a variety of options, including publicly available indexes. The goal of the amendments of Rule 570, as in the NOPR, are to provide more transparency to avoided cost calculations, and importantly, to ensure that amounts paid to QFs do not exceed the utility's actual avoided costs. So the main issue is, should avoided costs be based on fixed historical cost at the time the obligation is created? Or should the avoided costs be variable based upon the cost of energy at the time of delivery? And if they're variable, should the cost be based on what's called locational marginal prices as established by a regional transmission organization? And I'll use the acronyms LMP for locational marginal prices and RTO for regional transmission organizations. Our current Rule 570 required the use of historical prices, but it does not accurately reflect the utility's current avoided costs. Under Order 872, FERC specifically has authorized market prices and variable prices for the avoided cost calculation. Each one of the IOUs, EPE, PNM, and SPS would like variable pricing over the life of the contract at the time that energy is delivered. They believe that it's important not to exceed current market pricing, because if it's a fixed price, the price may exceed market price, and customers would be required to pay above market price to QFs. SPS supports using LMPs established by the Southwest Power Pool, which is its regional transmission organization. And PNM supports using the LMP from the Western EIM. Right now, EPE is not a member. It's not. I don't want to compete with this dog. Right. I think whoever has the dog should put their themselves on mute. Anyway, excuse me?
They just did.
Oh, excellent. EPE is not a member of an RTO right at this time. It will be a member of an RTO. So it wants to be able to do LMP pricing as well. Staff had a little bit different idea. They do not want the utility in the position of unilaterally setting avoided cost energy rates based upon LMPs. They wanted to add subject to mutual agreement between the utility and the QF. And they also want to, but right now, the NOPRD rule says that any utility may establish avoided costs based upon LMPs, market hub prices, formulas based on natural gas prices, or competitive solicitations. Again, Mr. Marks and Mr. Flax Davidson did not agree. They do agree that states do have the flexibility to allow avoided costs be variable, but they state that our commission could also allow fixed pricing. And they state that obtaining financing is a barrier to QF formation, and it has that without fixed pricing, QFs will not be able to get financing and will not be able to be built. And that's pretty much a summary of the issues. And as I stated, I would like, at any time, I would be available to talk with you one-on-one about the rule, and I can bring back a final rule at any point when the commission would like me to and feels comfortable with the issues. And I stand for questions.
Any questions for Judy?
Mr. Chair.
Chair Hall.
So, Judy, when I look at the language from FERC that you read to us about how a QF has to demonstrate commercial viability and financial commitment to construct its facility, I guess, without having read briefs that have been filed in this case yet, I don't know the details of the argument, but to me, financial commitment to construct sort of implies that there's some financial commitment on the part of a lender. So it seems to me your item number 3, the third of the 6th provisions that you say the parties agreed to provides some, wait a minute, it's not number 3. There was one about financing here.
Yes.
Whereas I think they would have applied for, but not even received a loan. And all the parties agreed to that. And is there a story behind that? Oh, number 5, the qualifying facilities attained has obtained or applied for financing of the proposed project
Yeah.
as evidenced by a loan application documents or other types of financing applications. So you don't even have to have obtained a loan. You just have to have applied for it. And that you say that's something the parties agree satisfies the FERC standard of having you have to show financial commitment to construct. Are they meaning there's a commitment on the part of the QF and not a bank?
The criteria has to be within the control of the QF. So in terms of the parties, well, this is a rulemaking, but that being said, the utilities all concur with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The two participants, Mr. Jason Marks and Mr. Ron Flax Davidson, stated that number 5 was not necessary and created an obstacle or a barrier.
Why was number 5 an obstacle when it didn't even require a bank loan, just an application for it? What was the obstacle nature of it?
That's a good question. I believe what they stated was they were unnecessary hoops to jump through, and that 1, 2, and 3, as well as number 7, which is the added by PNM or NEP regarding self-certification. They thought 1, 2, 3, and 7 were sufficient, that 4, 5, and 6 were just added hoops and were not necessary.
Was there any clarification of what meaningful steps in number 2 means? The qualifying facility has taken meaningful steps to obtain site control to construct the entire qualifying facility.
Well,
let me finish. There's another part here, which the qualifying facility may demonstrate through the production of an executed agreements and through similar measures. So I got 2 questions there. What's similar measures and what's meaningful steps? Are there definitions for those terms, or was there discussion on those?
No, I think there was not discussion except for stating that actually all participants agreed obtaining site control was a reasonable and objective criteria, satisfied the FERC Order 872. Regarding what it means that the QF has to show executed agreements that they have site control, such as, rights of way, or they bought the land, or, and I think the word similar measures, we didn't want to be too specific because we didn't want to exclude a demonstration of an executed, some sort of executed document that would demonstrate site control.
I see. Well, okay. Well, it looks like there's not full agreement then concerning 4, 5, and 6, and 7. Is that right?
No, 4, 5, and 6. As I said, Mr. Marks and Mr. Flax Davidson thought they were not necessary. The utilities, as well as the electric co-ops, had no problem with them. Staff didn't comment on them and focused their comments on the avoided cost calculation issue.
So, but they didn't think they were necessary, but did they oppose them or not?
Staff did not oppose them.
And what about the other 2 parties, Mr. Marks and
Yeah,
Flax
Mr.
Davidson.
Marks and Mr. Flax Davidson wanted them deleted. 4, 5, and 6.
Okay, so it's not really completely agreed to. That's okay. I just was trying to clarify that in my mind.
That's correct, Commissioner Hall.
Yeah.
I would say, except for Mr. Flax Davidson and Mr. Marks, there was no opposition to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Okay.
Mr. Flax Davidson and Mr. Marks objected to the necessity of 4, 5, and 6.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hall. Any other questions for Judy? I guess, Judy, in terms of timing, I certainly don't want to wait until June of 2022, which is our deadline to approve this final rule. But where are we in the procedural schedule? What remaining milestones do we have in the procedural schedule that would, clear a path to final adoption before the deadline of June?
Chairman Maestas, we have completed the procedural schedule, had the public hearing on June 28th, and the record closed on July 31st. The commission could adopt a final rule next week if it chose.
So Judy, then the primary issue is making a determination on avoided costs.
Yes, and also, as Commissioner Hall just brought up, there's a small amount of controversy on those, on number 4, 5, and 6 in the LEO. But yes, the avoided cost issue is probably the main contested issue. And I detailed the issues, and as I said, we can continue to discuss them now. I can discuss them individually with each commissioner, however the commission wants to proceed. But when I bring it back for a final rule, it would be good to have in advance, fleshed it out with each commissioner so that no one feels as if they don't understand the issue, and everyone understands the real world ramifications of the final rule.
Well, since we're here discussing it, and if we only have the issue of avoided costs that we need to determine, then we should do that, should we not?
Well, I would agree. I could do it now, but I don't know if other commissioners have really had a chance to read this and think about it. So it's completely your choice.
Well, it seems that based on your memo, excuse me, that fixed costs are really, not really appropriate, that that variable costs over the life of the contract should be more appropriate. Now, is there any objection to that from the other commissioners, and anyone still need time to make the determination? Commissioner Fishman.
Yeah. When a utility engages in a PPA, for instance, those folks, that's a fixed cost that provider is getting paid. And if you set up a variable cost that doesn't have some kind of profit constraint built into it, you're essentially creating a situation where the developer is going to have a hell of a time getting financing. And you pretty much close the door to any kind of any project along those lines being put into place, it seems to me, from a practical standpoint. my first instinct was, okay, variable cost makes sense, but then my second thought was, gee, that's putting a constraint on the developer that doesn't exist when you're doing a PPA. And that's unequal treatment, I guess. So I'm not quite sure what to do with that, but I'll make just a couple other general comments in a way, and a question for Judy. Judy, is the litigation now completed, or is it ongoing with Great Divide? Are there appeals in place, or?
Commissioner Fishman and members of the commission, the appeal to the 10th Circuit was dismissed because the commission had initiated this rulemaking to change its old rule to comply with the new FERC rule. So
Okay.
this rulemaking essentially was the basis of the Nmprc, EPE, and SPS's. They were all parties to the 10th Circuit appeal. The basis of the argument to the motion to dismiss, which was granted. So it is, the litigation is over. I see this, completing this rulemaking as something that the commission has represented to the court that they will do,
Right.
and was the reason for the dismissal. So I think that we need to complete this.
Right. My other question is, are there any other projects, PURPA projects within the New Mexico jurisdiction that are currently pending, proposed, or underway? Because it seems to me this process is it's outdated. It's from the 70s that this was put together. It seems to me a really complicated way to go about things, given that we have other mechanisms in place now, community solar and a whole bunch of other processes. Are there any others that are in place currently, or that you know that are pending?
Commissioner Fishman, I do not know of any pending PURPA applications. That being said, I wouldn't be in the position to know that.
Right.
The utility division would be. So I think that, that would be a question for them. I don't see why they couldn't state that now. It has nothing to do with the case. It's just a fact as to whether or not there are any QF pending applications out there. The only way that the commission got involved with Great Divide was because they filed a complaint against El Paso Electric, and then it became a litigated matter before the commission.
We have an interesting note from Arthur here. Arthur, you may want to get on and just quick speak to this.
Yeah, Commissioner Maestas, yes, Commissioner Maestas and Commissioners, thank you. I just wanted to point out, I've been listening to this conversation, and there would be potential implications for community solar projects to the extent that in the comments that were filed at the end of last month on community solar, the PNM utility is proposing that community solar projects be QF certified. Okay, so that would make these 7 criteria applicable to them. And so we would have to take that into consideration. And also that under the Community Solar Act, any unsubscribed energy that remains on the utility's books for a year would be paid to the project developer at an avoided cost rate. So those are just 2 issues that bear consideration when we're thinking about this. We, of course, have made no determinations as to whether community solar projects should be QF certified. And I could just talk with each individual commissioner about this as we go through the deliberations for community solar.
Thanks.
Yes, and if I could just add briefly, we had a long discussion yesterday about the interplay between the Community Solar Act and rulemaking and the purple rule, and a qualifying facility under the FERC regulations is 80 megawatts and under. And under community solar, I think it's 5 megawatts. So there is an issue as to can community solar be both, or it's totally in discussion area, as Art said.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Vice Chair Hall.
I'm curious. I'd like to know was there some reasoning offered for requiring community solar projects to be QF certified, and was the intention for it to invoke these provisions, or did they want a QF certification just standalone? And I mean, what's the background to that request?
If I may, Commissioner Hall, Commissioner Maestas.
Yes, Arthur.
That there really wasn't a whole lot of explanation. This was just in the comments that were filed. I think that the rationale was equal treatment of non-utility power projects, right? And kind of like a more certain kind of contractual arrangement. And, so that goes to exactly what kind of arrangement the commission will want to see between these projects and utilities. And I'll just say that dichotomy is utilities want a power purchase agreement type of thing, which would lend itself to QF requirements. Some of the non-utility players want to see more of a purchase agreement, but more of a kind of just a generation transfer agreement, which would be a different critter. So these are issues to be discussed and to be considered. I just wanted to raise the potential implications of this should the commission determine that PNM's request or proposal is warranted.
Thank you, Arthur. Mr. Chair, I agree that the avoided cost issue is an important issue for us to have to struggle with, especially given that, this rule is going to have implications not just in the PURPA world that we know now, but possibly for community solar projects. And the overlap makes me uncomfortable unless we get this rule really as clear as possible. I mean, I would not be ready to vote on this today. Well, it's not noticed for that, but I mean, I think this could be a long discussion, which I would like to have, but I agree with Judy. I don't know if everybody else is prepared to talk about it, but I had a number of questions I could ask, but I don't know how much time we don't want to devote to it today. And I also feel that I would like to read that 10th Circuit opinion. I mean, we're getting a few sentences of it here, which I think are probably very important sentences, but I would just like to get a little better idea of the court's view in general. And I also had a question about the timing of FERC's dealing with this matter. Judy, did FERC so the appeal that was made to the 10th Circuit, was that from our commission decision or was it from a FERC opinion? I'm a little confused here. I forget what the order of events was, but I thought the 10th Circuit was just the case that came from New Mexico, and independently FERC decided to revise its interpretation of the rule. Is that correct or what?
Hall, yeah, pretty much. It was a 2018 case before the commission that eventually was appealed to the New Mexico Federal District Court. And in Federal District Court in New Mexico, I believe it was at the end of 2019, the court issued a very long opinion. And I believe we've provided it to you, but I can provide it to you again. Actually upholding our current rule. And then Great Divide appealed that decision to the 10th Circuit. Meanwhile, in 2020, there was a rulemaking going on at FERC that they were receiving comments and they were revising the FERC regulations in a variety of ways, including the legally enforceable obligation provisions, which was at the heart of the Great Divide litigation. So then in July of 2020, FERC came out with Order 872 with the proposed regulations, which ultimately got published in the Federal Register and became effective at the end of 2020. So the FERC amendments were moving kind of simultaneously while the litigation was going on, and they became final before oral argument, but after briefing in the 10th Circuit. And then when they became final and the Nmprc issued the NOPR in this case, the parties, including the Nmprc, filed a motion to dismiss, and the 10th Circuit granted it based upon the intervening events of Order 872 by FERC and based upon the Commission's notice of proposed rulemaking to comport with Order 872.
Oh, I see. So the 10th Circuit took note of the fact that FERC was revising its rule, or had just about completed its revision of the rule. And
it was effective in December 2020, and that's when the motion, right after the motion to dismiss was filed.
So it sounded like you were saying that FERC was receiving comments in order to start that revision of their rule. I assume it was from other states as well as our state, or individuals, or I can't think FERC would have taken this action purely because of our case and before the 10th Circuit. But
you're absolutely correct. In the Order 872, it's probably like 200 pages long. They received numerous comments from utilities and state regulatory commissions throughout the country. They cite to numerous comments that were filed. It's a very long and technical and substantive order.
So are you aware of any states that have revised their own rule with respect to avoided costs already? And if so, have they been discussed during this rulemaking proceeding?
At the time that New Mexico issued its NOPR, and in June of 2021, when we had the public hearing, no one involved in this case knew of any other states.
How long ago was that?
That was the end of June. I don't know whether any other states have started a rulemaking since June of 2021, but even if they did, they probably have not concluded it.
I see. Okay, well, Mr. Chair, I'd be willing and able to talk more about the avoided cost issue. I mean, to some extent, like I say, I'd like to probably read more of that case and read more of the FERC comments. And there's a lot to, I guess, get really up to speed on to have a meaningful analysis of where we ought to go. I agree with the comments made so far by both you and Commissioner Fishman. And, while it makes sense, really, given the advances that have occurred and technology and all the, the changes to the grid, which needs to be flexible, it makes sense from the utility standpoint to want to have the avoided costs be a flexible thing, variable thing, I should say. But I fully appreciate Commissioner Fishman's comment that can be a very challenging job. That makes a very that it presents a challenge to developers trying to provide some certainty to a lender when they need a steady fixed revenue stream. So I don't know if we could resolve that issue today. So I guess I would propose that we maybe we should bring this up another time for discussion. I know we still have a lot of other things on the agenda, other discussion items, but if other people want to continue to discuss it, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hall. Commissioner Fishman, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, just wanted to make a suggestion that maybe each of the commissioners do spend a little time with Judy. I already have, and it was very helpful and useful for me. And that maybe then we put it on an agenda for next week or a couple weeks down the road after we've all had a chance to pick Judy's brain and get our thoughts as clear as we can.
Great idea, Commissioner Fishman. So let's do that. I think this is what Judy had suggested, that she spend maybe the next week or two discussing with individual commissioners to get a better idea of what their preference is in resolving some of these unresolved issues. But I agree with Commissioner Fishman. I think we should bring the final rule up for action within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Would be my preference. Any objection to that approach? Any
Commissioner,
other? Yes, Vice Chair Hall.
Mr. Chair, I would say 2 weeks. I would say 2 weeks.
Minimum 2 weeks. So Judy, thank you for the presentation.
You're
And,
welcome. I'll
yes, go ahead.
contact your assistants to set up some meetings.
Okay. Thank you. All right, let's move on. We have the consent agenda. Now, I'd rather entertain a motion to approve and get a second before we get the reading of the consent. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair Hall. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Yes, I have a question about one of the consent action items. It's case number 200099-UT. This is submitted by Russell Fisk. And in the description, it says application for 2021 broadband project support. Is the year correct, or is there a typo there?
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, no, that is correct. When we began naming, or when I began naming these, the dockets for the broadband program application cycle each year, and the first docket, I put the next year as the year. I think it's become confusing, and I apologize for that. Instead of the year of the actual consideration of the applications, I started putting in the next year, which is the year that payments could begin. So that's why it says for 2021 broadband program support, because applications that were granted in 2020 allowed for payments on projects to begin the next year. I think in the end, this has been not a very good naming convention that I came up with. So that's the reason for the confusion. I apologize for that, but that is correct. 2021 is when the support could generally begin for those projects. I think it is confusing though. I think I will cease that practice. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Russell, and thank you, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar. We still need a second to Vice Chair Hall's motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I will second.
Okay, second by Commissioner Fishman. Michael Smith, do you mind
Yes.
reading?
Sorry, I'm just trying to move my screen. The consent action items that are the subject of this motion are case 21-00284 TRM in the matter of the application of Community Trans LLC DBA Community Trans for a certificate to provide non-emergency medical transport service. It's a potential order regarding application for certificate. Case 21-00293 TRM in the matter of the application of Santa Fe County DBA Santa Fe County Fire Department for reissuance of certificate number 42343 to provide ambulance service. This is a potential order regarding application for reissuance of certificate. Case 21-00297 TRM in the matter of the application of Bernat Mascarenas, DBA Bernard's Transportation Service for certificate to provide limousine service, also a potential order regarding the application for certificate. Utility matters are case 20-00099 UT in the matter of applications for 2021 broadband program support from the State Rural Universal Service Fund as per Rule 17.11.10.31 NMAC. This is a potential order regarding Baca Valley's request for midpoint disbursement for Anderson project and a potential order regarding Baca Valley's request for final disbursement for Anderson project. The last case is 21-00286 UT. This is in the matter of the formal complaint of Cynthia Medvedev Blake against Public Service Company of New Mexico, and this is a potential order. I will take the vote of the commission. Commissioner Hall.
Aye.
Commissioner Fishman.
Aye.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas.
Aye.
Consent action items are approved by a vote of 5-0.
All right, we've been at it for 2 hours. We're approaching the lunch hour. I'd like to have at least a short break, unless the commission just wants to take their lunch break now. I really can't predict how long the remaining agenda items will take. But can we agree on maybe a 10-minute break?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Vice Chair Hall.
That'd be fine with me, but I would also be in favor of a lunch break now, just because we don't know how long they'll take later.
Okay.
So either one is fine, but
Chairman Maestas.
Yes. Yes, Hans.
Just to pose the proposed questions, I do think the first two items under consent are matters that would be fairly concise. The orders themselves are not really subject to, I would say, controversy. That they're really the two items there possibly could have been put on consent, but I really put them on regular action item just for the purpose of informing the commission that these matters are before the commission. So with that, I would say those two items would probably be rather quick, but I will leave it to the commissioners as to what type of break you would like to take right now.
Yeah, I guess, Hans, you have some place to be. Okay, well then.
No,
let's-
I'm good. I'm just, because there were questions as to how long stuff would take is the only reason I'm interjecting.
Well, let's proceed forward, but we'll go maybe one or two agenda items and then we'll break for lunch. So go ahead, Hans, under regular action items in the matter of amending the pipeline safety excavation damage prevention rule 18.60.5 NMAC in case 21-224-PL. Go ahead, Hans.
Thank you, Chairman Myasis. This matter comes before the commission to commence a rulemaking proceeding to consider the adoption of proposed changes to the pipeline safety excavation damage prevention rule to change the state of New Mexico from being a clock state to a midnight state for purposes of utility line location requests. Currently, as a clock state, requests to locate utility lines must be completed at the exact 48-hour increment from the time of the request under current Rule 5. If New Mexico were to become a midnight state, requests to locate utility lines are due to be completed at midnight on the second business day after the request. The locator then could have better efficiency by completing all locates in sequential order as they drive north from south to north or north to south, and all locate procedures would be timely as long as they were completed before midnight. The proposed order then proposes the amended language for adoption and issues the notice of proposed rulemaking, setting deadlines for written comments by March 15th, 2002, response comments by March 29th, 2022, a public hearing on April 5th, and closure of the record by April 19th. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
You delivered on concise, Hans. Any questions for Hans? If not, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We hear a second. We have a motion by Vice Chair Hall, a second by Commissioner Byrd. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. Mike Smith, take the roll.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas,
Aye.
Commissioner Fishman,
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
Commissioner Hall.
Aye.
The order is approved 5-0.
Let's move on to utility matters. In case 21-267-UT, in the matter of the application of New Mexico Gas Company, Inc. for approval of revisions to its rates, rules, and charges pursuant to advice notice number 87. Hans, take it away.
Thank you again, Chairman Fishman. Chairman Meyer. Get used to new dates and new chairs. This matter comes before the commission based upon the December 13th, 2021 New Mexico Gas Company application seeking approvals of revision to New Mexico Gas Company's rates, rules, and charges. Specifically, New Mexico Gas Company seeks revision to its original rate, number 1-9, fifth revised rate number 10, fifth revised rate number 30, fifth revised rate number 35, fourth revised rate number 37, second revised rate number 39, fifth revised rate number 54, 56, and 58, sixth revised rate number 61, seventh revised rate number 70, original rate number 72, and second revised rule number 29 and original rule number 30. The proposed order before the commission that I have forwarded suspends that advice notice number 87 for 9 months as allowed under NMSA section 6287C and assigns hearing examiner Elizabeth Hurst to conduct a hearing concerning the justness and reasonableness of the proposed rate changes. The hearing examiner is further ordered by the commission to issue a procedural order to establish the time frame for the procedure and intervention by the interested parties. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Hans? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Vice Chair Hall. Do I hear a second? Come on, anyone?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Fishman. Any discussion on the motion? Mike, please take the roll.
Commissioner Fishman,
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas,
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Aye.
The order is approved by a vote of 5-0.
Way to deliver, Hans. Very concise. Okay, decision time. Do you all want to take a lunch break and maybe reconvene at 12:30? I know it looks like we just have a few items and I am remiss to try and predict how much time it would take. But if you want to press on, I'm willing to press on as well.
We can do that.
Can we take if we want to press on, can we take a short 10, 15-minute break? I'll just get a snack because my
Okay,
tummy's rumbling.
Let's take a break and let's reconvene at high noon.
Ah,
Okay,
All right,
thanks.
all right, thank you.
back at noon. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, everybody, it's high noon. Is everybody back? Calling all commissioners. Don't make me call the sergeant at arms. right,
Okay,
why
I'm
don't-
kind of back.
Okay, all right, let's get going then. We are about to discuss and act on item 9 under the regular action item agenda under utility matters. So this is case 21-309-UT. It's a joint petition requesting the Public Regulation Commission initiate, conduct, and oversee a study to determine the public ratepayer environmental and economic benefits and costs, as well as the technical feasibility of a state-level public utility models for the state of New Mexico. And this is a potential order regarding the request to present at the next commission meeting on January 12th. So Russell, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Good afternoon. So this is a petition that's been filed by a group of New Mexico legislators who seem to be led by Senator Elizabeth Stefanik and Representative Andrea Romero. This petition is requesting that the commission have some role, as you see from the title of the caption, initiate, conduct, and oversee. Conduct and oversee are two different things for a study, but basically asking the commission to be involved in some way with a study to determine to answer a number of questions about what the potential benefits and downsides might be to New Mexico having a publicly owned electric utility. That's what they mean by public utility models. They also refer to it as public power is a word that is a term that they use as well. So I've drafted a proposed order that would grant the request that's made in the petition to have Senator Stefanik and Representative Romero or their representative, that's how they phrase it, or their representative, make a presentation to the commission, a 10-minute presentation at next week's open meeting so that the commission can hear more about this proposal and ask questions and engage in a dialogue, because this is an unusual request. It's something quite new. So I thought that the commission might want to hear the presentation to ask questions and such. But the commission could also could deny this petition. I've noted in the proposed orders findings paragraphs that the commission would not have jurisdiction over the subject matter of this study, which is the potential establishment and operation of a publicly owned electric utility. That's simply something that is not provided for in the Public Utility Act. The Public Utility Act is concerned with regulating rates and service of existing electric utilities, privately, the investor-owned utilities, et cetera. So there's no provision for publicly owning a utility. Obviously, this would require legislative action to make it possible, the publicly owned utility. So in the memo, if you're following along, I'm at the top of page 2, basically recreating these findings for the that are in the proposed order. Because I think even if the commission does decide that it would like to hear from the petitioners some more information about how the commission might be involved, I think at the outset that the commission should note that this is not an area where the commission has jurisdiction. It's an area for new legislation, which the legislators may also be pursuing. I don't know. I think it needs to be said here because there's a claim in the petition that the commission does have legislation over the subject matter. Obviously, this would be a major change in policy that would have to happen at a legislative level. And then I make this statement also: this lack of commission authority over such subject matter may also act as a limitation upon the commission's authority to conduct the proposed study. It's not 100% clear to me yet if the commission would be considered outside the powers of the commission to even study such a radically different area. It's not. I'm still looking into that. Under the PRC Act, it's they're under the powers of the commission. It seems that it may be the commission might be able to study something like this, even though the commission wouldn't ultimately be able to go create a regulatory structure for regulating a publicly owned utility until the legislature had acted. So, and then of course I know, I'll just read the sentence they put in there. The commission further notes that its resources, both budgetary and personnel, are currently quite strained in meeting its statutory duties, the commission's statutory duties, as everybody knows, particularly in light of recent legislative mandates. So even if, to the extent the commission has jurisdiction to participate in this study, obviously the commission is quite strained in its resources trying to meet current needs. So I wanted to note that as well. But then the order would say the commission may be able to play a role in the proposed study, and certainly is interested in engaging with the petitioners on at next week's open meeting to learn about the proposal and ask questions. I think with that, I'll just take any questions from the commission.
Thanks, Russell. Any questions for Russell regarding this petition? I have one, but I'll hold off and hear from everyone else.
Well, Mr. Chair, I don't have questions for Russell, but I have comments I'd like to make when we get to that point. I mean,
Sure, go ahead.
Well, I guess with respect to the issue of whether or not we have jurisdiction, I mean, I concur. Our jurisdiction is, based on being able to regulate monopoly utilities, investor-owned utilities, and set rates. But I don't see the request as asking us to issue any kind of an opinion as to the merits of the study. My understanding is we're just viewed as the agency with the most appropriate expertise to see that such a study is conducted properly. I mean, I don't see it as a request for us to opine one way or another as to what would be the best result. I thought that, we were just going to be able to be the best steward of the work, but itself. But I also agree that, unless this request comes with financing, we don't have the resources available to conduct it, certainly on our own. I think the scope of it is such that it will certainly have to be contracted out with two experts. And that takes money, which we don't have. So those are my views. I think it would certainly be an undertaking we could manage as long as it's appropriately funded. And as long as it's very clear that it's not an endeavor that involves us to exercise any judgmental conclusion about the outcome. I see it as an effort by the legislature to just try to get some work done and they're asking us a favor to do that. And hopefully they'll be able to fund it.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hall.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
I'll
Commissioner
just follow
Fishman.
on. I think comments. I think it is a good idea to hear them out for a couple reasons. One, just courtesy to the 13 or 14 legislators who signed on to this letter. I think that probably the appropriate way to do this in the end is pass a memorial that funds a study. And if they decide to do it through, have the PRC be the steward or of that study, that would be the right way to go. But if that's the direction that they do want to head, that conversation that they have with us may help them decide if that is the direction they want to go. And if the PRC is the agency that they want to do it through. So I don't see anything to lose here. Just so long as we all understand that we're not a legislative body. We don't make policy at that level. They do. And so I'll just echo Commissioner Hall's sentiments on those points.
Thank you, Commissioner Fishman. Any other comments? Commissioner Byrd, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, any comments on this petition?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Vicente
can
Aguilar.
you hear me? Yes. There is a North Central New Mexico Economic Development District located here in New Mexico. They do a comprehensive economic development strategy. The economic developers director's name is Christopher Madrid. And his phone number is 505-920-9257. I think that's probably the right strategy to get answers for them after they do a comprehensive study. And this is a regional council for governments, for local government, which was established in 1967. And with the economic projects initiatives. So they would have a better handle. I think that's just my thought. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Byrd, any comments on this?
No.
Thank you. We got another.
That was concise.
We got another pro-concise guy. All right. I agree with the previous comments. I think we should approve the presentation, certainly not just to be courteous to the legislators, but interested in what the end game is and what the legislative strategy would be. I agree with Commissioner Fishman. I think that this is going to require some kind of a memorial, a legislative memorial to kick this effort off. I think just if you look at community solar alone, it took many, many years to bring that to fruition. And I would consider public power, investigating and looking into the feasibility of a public power to be quite more substantial than community solar. So I'm all ears right now, and I would support, approving their presentation at the next open meeting. But Russell, I did have a question about our rules of procedure for something like this. You said this action is very unique. We obviously opened a docket on this, but is there anything in our rules of procedure that apply to this situation, this joint petition?
Mr. Chairman, procedurally, there is a section of our rules that applies to petitions. But perhaps what you're getting to a little bit more, maybe, is that this issue that I brought up of the powers of the commission, my uncertainty as to whether the commission may conduct a study in an area over which it would not have jurisdiction without further legislation. The petition section of a rules of procedure just provides some, general procedures. I don't remember exactly for how to process a petition as opposed to a complaint or a motion. But if you're asking more about the question of the commission's power to do it, maybe not. I don't mean to sidetrack your question. We do have a section of our rules of procedure that applies to petitions. But am I getting the gist of the question?
Yeah, for now, yes. But, the more I think about this, I guess my next question for you is, the overarching charter or charge of the commission is to, uphold the public interest. And by definition, that's balancing the interests of utility investors and ratepayers. And would this, if we sanction this study, would that contradict, that statutory charge, the general charge that we have for upholding the public interest? I mean, in other words, is this action maybe, more geared toward, ratepayer advocacy than balance?
Mr. Chairman, I guess what I would say is that's the reason I put that as a may. The subject matter is quite distant from the Public Utility Act, in that the Public Utility Act does not at all contemplate a publicly owned utility. The petitioners, point to the fact that to our general, the commission's general authority over rates, et cetera. But this is very much at the edge of it, because obviously this would require a very substantial legislation and a quite big change in policy for the state to do that. And so it's kind of on the edge. And the portion of there are some different provisions, one in the Public Utility Act, and then also within the PRC Act, where there's a specific section that defines the powers and duties of the Constitution, is that in a section on powers and duties, I just get this in front of me. There's the section that defines the commission's power to investigate. Now, this is, I don't know if the legislature meant that word to include something like study, but I think is relevant. Is in section 884 of the PRC Act, which literally is the commission's powers and duties. There's subsection 7 of that says the commission has the power to conduct investigations as necessary to carry out the commission's responsibilities. And I would say at this point, this is not a responsibility of the commission. Now, I think, as Commissioner Hall said, of all agencies within the state, we're the agency that has expertise with regard to electric utilities in general. So it's understandable that they would come here, but I'm not sure that the PRC Act really envisions the commission undertaking a study, especially if the commission were to conduct it and to apply resources of the commission to it, for something that would require a tremendous legislative change before it would even be a matter for the commission to deal with. Do you see what I mean? Sort of on the outer edge of the subject matter that the commission could be considered the commission's responsibilities. Certainly, the commission has no responsibilities now with regard to such a public power, as they put it. So it is. I find it on the edge. That's why I did put in the sentence as may conducting the study may be beyond the powers of the commission, since the ultimate subject matter is beyond the jurisdiction of the commission. But Commissioner Hall and I believe Commissioner Fishman discussed the idea of the commission could be a sort of a monitoring house for could be not the agency that actually conducts the study and undertakes it in that sense, but could be the place where the study is housed or something like that. And I think that would be okay because wouldn't be pledging a lot of commission resources to something that is not within our jurisdiction. Does that answer that?
It does. Well, I think that maybe it's premature to even, discuss in detail about, who would sanction or oversee the study, where the funding would come from. I think this is a concept or a model that clearly is going to require a significant amount of legislative effort. So I think we ought to just, as a courtesy, as Commissioner Fishman mentioned, let's hear these legislators out or their representatives and query them in terms of kind of a way forward if this is what they want to do. I don't want the agency to be compromised if there's any future actions that may come before the agency after we oversee directly the conduct of this study. I'm just a little concerned about that, but I'm willing to kind of keep my powder dry, so to speak, and ask questions next week if we pass this order. Any other comments, Commissioner Fishman? Peace.
Yeah, and I just say we should just keep an open mind, and the discussion very much should be, gee, maybe we're not the right place. Maybe there's another place, and even if we just get them thinking about that, at least we performed a service to help them on their way. So to me, it's all worth discussion.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair Hall.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I also think that, well, in my mind, it would be impossible for us to conduct the study ourselves. We don't have the staff and the expertise to do that. I really think it would have to be a study conducted on contract by either us or by the legislature, or both of us. I've heard that idea also tossed out there, that it would be a joint effort by the legislature and the commission to jointly oversee the project, if oversee is even a word. I think the idea is just contract it out, because I do not believe we have the resources to do it, and I would never want to impose on staff a burden like this. But I also have to say, I don't think it's beyond the pale necessarily for us to especially in our, what would be essentially kind of a custodial role, because the recommendations would come from whoever the experts are who are producing the study, not from us. But I don't think it's beyond the pale for us to entertain ideas related to the operation of public utilities, or as is being proposed in this as subject for study, community choice, which is, I believe, a sort of a form of deregulation at the generation level of the monopoly structure. That sort of topic is something that I think falls within our reach of study and possible action in another scenario, not in this scenario. This is purely a study. And I think, frankly, it would be an interesting study to see and understand for purposes of doing our duty better as rate regulators. We shouldn't have such tunnel vision about what we do that we don't inform ourselves about other ways, other entities who provide electricity operate. We certainly find ourselves in a brave new world with our energy transition, and we need to be informed. I would be interested in the results of it, regardless of who contracts it out. I would want to understand it. And I think it's quite novel that it pertains to what I understand is the notion of a statewide utility. I think I've heard of maybe one state that's a very small state that has a statewide utility that's a public utility. I mean, it is a very large departure from what is going on now in this state. So, it would be something to learn from. And I don't think it's anything that we could be found to be doing anything wrong by being the monitor, if you will, of its conduct because of our expertise in utility regulation in that field in general. And that includes variations in how utilities are regulated. So I would leave it there. I think it's within our ambit personally, but we certainly should hear how they want it conducted before we make a decision at all. So I just want to make those comments.
I would move the order.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, second by Commissioner Hall. Just under discussion, I wanted to at least highlight a silver lining here, and that is that, the legislature, at least as a subset of the legislature, is, reaching out and willing to collaborate with us. And I hope that maybe this will lead to, an ongoing dialogue with respect to discussing appropriate subject matters that could be the subject of legislation instead of legislators relying on their own subject matter experts. So I'm going to put a plug in for that next week if this resolution passes. And also on the issue of looking at current statutes that need to be amended. And I think that we need to have this 360-degree, process with the legislature to refine and optimize existing legislation and provide substantive feedback on some of these subject matters that they're considering in the form of potential legislation. So maybe this is a sign of good things to come in our relationship with the legislature.
Hear, hear. I agree, Mr. Chair. I think this is a good move, a good phenomenon to see.
Okay. All right. So we've got a motion and a second. Any other additional discussion? All right. Hearing none. Mike Smith, take the roll.
Commissioner Fishman,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas,
Aye.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
The order is approved by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you. My blood sugar is holding, so I think we can go on. Let's go to item 12, discussion and potential action items. It's item number 10, discussion and potential action regarding offer of technical assistance in 2022 from the Department of Energy's Grid Modernization Consortium. Commissioner Fishman, is Arthur going to kind of tee this off?
Yeah, let's let Arthur lead off.
All right, Arthur.
Chairman Maestas and commissioners, thank you very much. I won't take very much time on this. This is really a point of information and good news in that it represents another outreach by the federal government to state agencies to provide technical expertise on matters that the federal government is increasingly wanting to see happen. Back in August, the Department of Energy issued a solicitation for states to bring them proposals from the Grid Modernization Initiative. And in discussions with Commissioner Fishman at that time, we did enter a proposal and met with a panel of DOE and National Laboratory folks to talk about the proposal. And what we had in mind originally was to devise what I call a flight path for the clean energy transition. We have certain dictates from the Energy Transition Act. We have an idea of how we need to increase renewable energy, but we don't have very granular milestones in place for achieving the reductions of greenhouse gas emissions that are attributed to legacy fossil fuel plants, right? And basically what we're looking at is over the next 15, 20 years, a change in the balance from these legacy greenhouse gas emitters, carbon emitters, to cleaner energy, including renewable energy and whatever comes down the pike. But we don't have a very good roadmap, if you will, or flight path on how to get there and how to reach the goals that the state has enunciated. My original proposal to the DOE was a little bit more involved in that I was hoping that they could provide us with some modeling capability, some sense of how we structure and create a timeline for the replacement and retirement of existing power plants. They felt that that was a little bit more than they could offer at this time, knowing that they were going to be getting a couple of dozen proposals from different states. So we revised it to really take a first step. And what this proposal would entail would be getting DOE and lab assistance in creating essentially a greenhouse gas inventory for the existing power plants that utilities own, operate, or contract from, so that we have a good sense of what their emissions profile is. And over time, if their operations change or they are reduced or retired, when we need to bring in the replacement resources. And I'll just point to the issue that we had with the replacement power from the San Juan generating station, which PNM did go out and signed contracts, and then a couple of months later found out that a couple of the projects they were counting on were not able to meet their milestones. And that kind of threw a wrench in the works in terms of replacement. And the utility came back to the commission with saying, well, we can't count on this 150 megawatts, so we're going to go out to market for 700 megawatts. We want to prevent that kind of thing. We want to have information in advance and knowing what should be replaced when and how it can be replaced. So you could consider this a first step. And what the national labs would help us do would be to help create the database based on FERC Form 1 information of what the emissions profile of existing plants are, and then we would be able to look over time. So this is something that will help the future commission meet its goals. I would hope that it could be part of a bigger strategy for really kind of reaching the goals of the Energy Transition Act, but recognizing that we'll take what we can get in terms of technical assistance from the federal government, that this represents a first step. I will note that we are one of 21 states that have been approved for their proposals. So there's a lot of work ahead for DOE, and I'm glad that we get their assistance. And also that this represents essentially the third time we've gone to DOE and asked for assistance. The two other requests that were favorably addressed included Community Solar Act, and as Commissioner Maestas knows, that we had that the NREL folks look into what the cost of administering a community solar project program would be, and they gave us some very useful information that's helping us in our deliberations. And the second is the pilot program for working with the New Mexico State University on interconnection hosting capacity analysis, and the Pacific Northwest Lab is going to be helping us with that. So I would say that we're doing pretty well. I mean, not just the Solar Innovator Program that has brought me and Mary Jane Parks to the commission, but these other three initiatives as well. And so I'm looking forward to it. The timeline is that we'll go back to DOE and talk about this and really refine the project in February. And then at that time, I can bring to you a real plan as to how we might do this. So with that, I'm open to any questions that you might have.
Mr.
Questions
Chair,
for Arthur? Yes, Vice Chair Hall.
I've got a question. How much person time does this project represent? Is this a full-time job or part-time job or a group of people needing to work on this, or what's?
That is still to be
How
determined.
long?
Yeah, I don't think that it would require that much, especially since we're essentially limiting what the project will entail, and I'll have more information, but I know that we would get at least a couple of people from the Northwest Lab to help us do this. They've done something like this in the past, working with commissions, so I would think that it wouldn't be all that involved, but certainly I would be prepared to work on this, and if there's somebody from the utilities staff, especially an engineer, that could work on this, that would be really good.
Okay. It doesn't sound like you can be more specific than that right
Not
now.
at this time.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a good thing.
All right, any other questions? But Arthur, it sounds like we're not ready to take action perhaps today, but you're just informing us of the technical assistance. And one thing I might suggest is that you send the scope of the technical assistance out to each commissioner.
Sure, I had shared the application that we forwarded in September when I sent out the note saying that we got approved for this, so that you have that, but I can send it out again just so you can see how it's described.
Can see
We don't
that.
really have a scope of work yet. That will be developed in February.
Please do, thank you. Any other comments or questions for Arthur?
Well, I'll just make a comment.
Commissioner Fishman.
Yeah, I think it's terrific that we've got several things going with the DOE, and that hopefully they're starting to see New Mexico as someone they could partner with to move forward on these federal goals, particularly environmental goals, but across the board. So again, and I just want to thank Arthur, because he's just been instrumental in helping develop this connections and this relationship. And I think it's something that in the future we can leverage to do a lot more. And at least that's my hope.
And if there's ever any money available, that would be great. Right now it's technical assistance, but as we've said on a number of occasions, the commission can use all the help it can get.
Absolutely, thank you. And then any other comments, Commissioners Byrd or Vicente Aguilar? Any questions regarding this? Right, hearing none, but Arthur, it's your intention to bring this back for action?
Yes, when I have something further to say, and so that'll be in February. And I think that it may just be here's what we're planning. Can we get your support?
Great, and I want to thank you, Arthur, and Commissioner Fishman. I know you guys collaborated on this to seek this assistance, and I think it's good stuff. As Arthur said, we need all the help we can get. So great job. All right, let's move on to another discussion item, item 13. It's in case 20-205-UT. In the matter of the temporary moratorium on residential utility disconnections during the time period COVID-19 pandemic emergency orders are in effect, as authorized by 17.9.560, 17.10.650, and 17.12.760 NMAC. Judy, would you like me to kind of kick this off a little bit, tee it up?
Commissioner Maestas and members of the commission, yes. Commissioner Maestas asked that the Office of General Counsel put this on as a discussion item, and my name is listed because that case number 20-00205 UT is the case that I've been handling. But yeah, this was at the request of Commissioner Maestas, who might be able to tee it up better than I can.
Thank you, Judy. This shouldn't take long. If you recall, I looked at all the monthly information that we've been receiving from the utilities with respect to total arrearages, total accounts facing disconnection, number of disconnections. And if you recall, I think this was in November, some of the trends were still disturbing in terms of the increasing number of residential ratepayers facing disconnection. And it was primarily El Paso Electric and Southwestern Public Service, SPS. And so I had Christopher update the table that consolidates the information on those facing disconnection, actual disconnections, reconnections, and total arrearages. And it looks as though if you looked at that table that was included, I think, wasn't that included? It was included.
Yeah, could we put up that?
Yeah, let's put up the table. Isaac, can you do that?
Yeah, give me just one moment.
So here's what I'm thinking, folks. You know, our last order regarding the moratorium on disconnections, I thought expired on November 15th by design, which is the beginning of the LIHEAP moratorium. But what we were seeing, at least at the time we last discussed this, is we were concerned about the rising market prices of natural gas, that it's compounding the impacts from the pandemic. And again, the trend lines for EPE and SPS were still going up. You know, total notices on disconnections was going up. Total arrearages was going up. So if you see the table there, it looks like, you know, like the trends are all going in the right direction. Christopher Hall put this together, but I also asked him to contact Department of Finance Administration, as many of you know, have been handling the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. And initially we were told that this funding would only be available through calendar year 21, but it seems that the federal government is going to allow the money to continue to be allocated to ratepayers experiencing impacts by the pandemic through these arrearages. And so I recall, I think PNM, if you look at PNM's data, their arrearages, total arrearages peaked at about 22 million, as I recall, 21 or 22. So it's come down substantially, almost 10 million in their total arrearages. And so I think we're finally making progress in this federal aid making its way to the utility companies to bring down these total arrearages. And what my intent was to consider any actions based on this data. And I'm not really proposing any, because the trends seem to be going in the right direction. But the only question that I had of, are we to assume that all those folks getting notices of disconnection are not LIHEAP eligible? And so there still is protection for LIHEAP eligible ratepayers, but there's a whole bunch of folks that are still underwater in their utility accounts that are not LIHEAP eligible. And so I'm just putting it out there for the commission to discuss if there's any discussion. But I know that, you know, when we did have the moratorium on disconnections, a lot of the utilities were telling us, you know, get out from between us and our customers. And I remember that clearly. And I certainly don't want to gum up any progress that they're making in actively working with their customers that are facing arrearages and getting them on payment plans and helping them to receive federal funds. But personally, I think it's incumbent upon us to always be aware of this situation, because this pandemic is far from over. And in fact, I think you'll see there's probably another peak that occurred here. If you look at, for example, PNM's notices issued, it hit a low in September, but now it's peaking again. It's going back up in October and November. So we're not out of the woods. The trends look good. And so my question for all of you, for my colleagues is, does this require any action or just vigilant monitoring? Anyone? Commissioner Fishman.
Yeah, thank you. I do think we still need to monitor. I'm looking at actually a chart from November of 2019 to October of 2021. And this is for SPS, but their arrearage eligible for disconnection was $1 million in November 2019. And now, as of October 21st, well, actually, as of November, per your chart, it's now 5.3 million. Headed in the right direction, heading down, but still well above kind of the baseline before we ran into COVID. And so again, it's headed the right direction, but we still got a long way to go. And actually, I'm also looking at total delinquency dollars. So that includes delinquencies that aren't yet available for disconnection. And that number has risen from 4.7 million to 11.1 million today. So we need to keep monitoring, but hopefully it looks like the worst is over.
Thank you, Commissioner Fishman. Any other comments on this? And I had Christopher Hall check on the latest public health order by the governor, and I think the current one is going to expire on the 7th. And I know that that's the only authority that we have to impose a mandatory moratorium on disconnections. It's the governor's public health order, but the short-term nature of the orders it can be maybe frustrating because, utilities want certainty in terms of what to expect, what they can do to help mitigate all these impacts to their ratepayers. So I'm not proposing any kind of, moratorium on disconnections or anything like that. But as Commissioner Fishman said, I think we just need to be aware of, how things are going, and they seem to be doing better. But I think it's incumbent upon us again just to monitor this and then determine if things go south, then we may have to consider some kind of action. Any
Mr.
other
Chair.
comments? Yes, Vice Chair Hall.
I just wanted to say I also feel concerned about the people who are not LIHEAP eligible, but are really low income or no income, and have gotten disconnected. And we can't look into that with these statistics. We can't see into that. And I recall some responses from utilities saying they can't distinguish between LIHEAP and non-LIHEAP customers. So maybe that's the end of it. I mean, it would take probably some agencies a bunch of work to try to identify LIHEAP customers and then cross-reference it with, if possible, with utility information. So I don't know if that's anything that's possible. But, I think it's good that we monitor numbers so we at least see what the lay of the land is. But without a governor's extension of that moratorium, I almost think the matter's almost out of our hands. Well, it's not until the 7th, but then when the moratorium ends, it is. So, I'm glad to see that it looks like movement has occurred that shows that people are willing to get back to their normal routine of paying bills. I don't think we're out of the woods at all. And I would like to be able to explore some other ways we could be helpful, but I think we'd have to engage with the utilities again, maybe in another opportunity to talk together about how effective their outreach programs are again, that sort of thing. And I don't know that these numbers actually merit that kind of a intervention at this point. Maybe we should wait and see after the 7th whether there is a continuation of the governor's order or not. But I appreciate you bringing the numbers before us. There's some hope to be gained from them.
Sure. And I think the last thing I'll mention is, we know that there's federal aid out there that's flowing, but the federal aid, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, is just that. It's for renters only. And I know that in those numbers of notices that there are homeowners, and I would like to find out what the status is of the federal aid for homeowners, where they can get some relief on their utility account arrearages. And so maybe what I'll do, if it's okay with all of you, is maybe invite Department of Finance and Administration over to give us an update on the federal funding. And the last time I inquired, it was Mortgage Finance Authority that was going to manage the federal aid for homeowners. But I'd kind of like to get an idea of how that's going, because I know that the rollout for funding for homeowners was lagging much farther behind the rollout of the federal funding or federal assistance for renters. So I may bring that, to the commission in the near future to get an update on those federal assistance programs.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else before we move on? Anything else? Any other comments on this? All right. Thank you for that. All right. Let's, that concludes kind of the formal portion of the agenda. Next is communications with the Chief of Staff.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Happy New Year. It's nice to see
Happy New
everybody. Commissioner Maestas and Commissioner Hall, congratulations to you on your new roles and responsibilities for the commission. Certainly look forward to working with you in those leadership roles over the next year. I can tell, even though he's on the 2nd floor and I'm on the 3rd floor, that Commissioner Maestas' blood sugar levels are dropping. So I'll try to be brief. Not a surprise to the commission, I'm sure, that over the next month and a half, a lot of my focus, a lot of staff's focus will be on the upcoming legislative session. I did send an update to you and division directors yesterday with a couple of items that we know of. I do believe that the executive will release its budget recommendation today, and that the Legislative Finance Committee will release theirs tomorrow. Of course, as soon as we have those recommendations, we will share those with the commission. This is a time of year where I always try to moderate my expectations. We did include quite a number of requests, both for FY22 and for FY23, to the legislature and to the executive. I'd be surprised if we got everything that we asked for. But I also try to remind myself that this is the beginning of the process and not the end of the process. These are staff recommendations to the executive and staff recommendations to the legislature. And just like here at the commission, staff proposes, but ultimately it's the commission that disposes. And so the legislature, the House Appropriations and Finance Committee, in particular, and the Senate Finance Committee, will take those recommendations. And if we have some items that we think we need additional funding, we will certainly be advocating for those over the next month and a half. I think we've set ourselves up with some preliminary discussions that we've had with the Office of the Speaker. We've had some good conversations with the Vice Chair of the House Appropriations and Finance Committee, the Chair of the Senate Finance Committee, and others as well over the last several months in terms of what the agency needs are and how we can move the commission forward, both for the current commission, but as for the commission that will be coming on board for January 1st of 2023 as well. And I do think, Mr. Chairman, that this will probably be a 2 budget cycle process for us. Again, I think we have a very solid request both for FY23 and FY22 that we've proposed to the legislature and the executive. But that doesn't mean that a year from now we won't be still have some needs that we need to fill. But I will provide very regular updates to the commission in terms of what's happening in the legislature, committee hearings that are coming up on legislation. I checked the pre-filing list today. We still don't have any PRC related legislation that's been pre-filed, but it's only the second day for pre-filing, and we'll, as I said, keep the commission and staff updated in terms of any other pre-filing or legislation that we anticipate. It's a 30-day session, so the focus really is on the budget, but that doesn't mean there won't be other PRC related issues that come up, and we'll bring those to the commission as soon as we're aware of them. Mr. Chair, I wanted to note that we have received a sufficient number of applications for the technical advisor economist position that I'd like to have our kind of pre-screening committee take a look at those resumes. We've received 3 applications. Take a look at those and see if any of those are ready to come before the commission. And if they are, we'll schedule that as soon as possible in a manner that works for the commission. And finally, Mr. Chairman, I just want to take us back to the beginning of the agenda, but the office is open 5 days a week. There are staff here 8 to 5. And I'm certainly happy to work with the Office of General Counsel and whoever else we need to work with. And I'm sure Renata and ASD is as well in terms of any postings that need to happen in the building. And we can certainly figure out a solution to that as well. I didn't want to bring that up earlier, but I think we have enough people in the building that we can cobble together something that notices and agendas are posted in the building as well. So I'll touch base with Mike on that and Isaac and Renata and see what we can do to make sure that happens. And with that, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks for that update, Wayne. Any questions for Wayne? Wow. In any way, Wayne, too, please again convey our condolences to Danielle for her heartbreaking loss.
I will, Mr. Chairman. I did have a chance to speak to her, I think yesterday, or maybe been the day before. I will say that she has felt the outpouring from commissioners. She mentioned in particular that all of the commissioners have been in contact with her, that staff has been in contact with her as well. And I know that means a lot to her, but it is a horrible time for her, and she needs all of our continued support, prayers, and love.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to communications with General Counsel.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'll make it short. I received the the resumes for the economist position that the Chief of Staff just mentioned. And we'll be taking a look at that in conjunction with the Chief of Staff. Also, with respect to getting those agendas posted, I did get some communications while the meeting was going on with suggested names of staff who could do that. As I said, it came up late yesterday, and I'm not really comfortable saddling somebody with a responsibility without talking to the Chief of Staff first. We'll deal with that, as I said, and we'll have an amended open meeting policy for the commission next week, I would expect. With that said, I just wanted to give you a heads up. I will not be able to attend the open meeting next week, so Judy or Russell will be filling in for me. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that, but I am available up until Wednesday, obviously, to confer with you. If you have any questions, I can answer that. Otherwise, I will pass on any further comment.
Any questions for Michael Smith? All right, your blood sugars are getting low too. All right, let's move on to matters from commissioners. Any matters from commissioners?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Byrd.
I just have one. Well, let's start with a question. Commissioner Fishman, can you play that guitar that's hiding behind you?
Yes, I can. Now, whether you'd want to hear it, that's another matter.
Well, that's the next request. Maybe sometime you could play the national anthem for us or something.
You know, I'd put Jimi Hendrix to shame.
Yeah, I do too, but in a whole different matter than what anybody would expect.
Okay.
That's it for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, Commissioner
Chair.
Fishman.
Yeah, a couple of items. I know that PNM has sent us a status update. I haven't had a chance to read it yet on their resource availability for this upcoming summer. And so I see in a message here from Mark Fenton that they did file a status update. I don't know if any of the, I haven't seen it, but it was in case number 20-00182 UT. And that was filed at the end of November. But summer's coming up soon, so I think it's a good idea to maybe stick that on next week's agenda, just to be sure that we're monitoring what's going on there and that we know what all our options are. Then second item is doing a work plan for this upcoming year. And we just, discussed with Arthur that the latest offer of support from the DOE. And I think it behooves us to take a look at everything that's going on and see if as a commission we're all on the same page about what the priorities are from now until December. So I'd like to get that on the agenda in the next couple, 3 weeks. Those are my only comments.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Fishman. I will respond to the recommendation for a work plan. I've been working on that. What I did is I got the 2-year work plan that we developed about a year ago. And then Commissioner Fishman, at your direction, I think Rob Lundeen, he kind of developed kind of a similar listing of current issues, rulemakings and stuff. So what I did is I combined and updated both of those documents, and I'm working with Vice Chair Hall to kind of finalize this draft. It'd be a draft outline for this 1-year work plan. And we plan on making it available for discussion next week. So we are moving on that. And I just want to let everybody know that it's not going to remain an outline. We're gonna put some meat on that bone and have tasks, even subtasks if necessary, and an appropriate responsible staff lead with some milestones to complete. So hopefully this will be a little more specific with accountability and specific timelines to ensure that we get done what we want to get done during this calendar year. So, but thank you for reinforcing that, Commissioner Fishman. I wanted to give the commission an update regarding our Board of Finance grant. The money's been made available in the amount of $100,000. And so we're moving on multiple procurement efforts that we're going to begin in parallel with the rulemaking process. We've been receiving comments on the community solar rulemaking process. So I'm excited about that. We have a team working on that, and Renata is really helped us along to be a really capable lead on these procurement issues. So shout out to Renata. Also, many of you have been hearing about the disaster declaration in Taos County. They have experienced an unusually high number of broken poles in very remote locations at alpine elevations. So, kind of my heart goes out to Taos County. They're getting through this. My understanding is there's still some folks, I think, in the Red River area that are without power. But Kit Carson is mobilizing crews to repair a lot of these broken poles. As you know, they experienced some extreme winter squalls that really dumped a lot of snow, particularly in Red River. So we're making progress in that regard. Just give you an update, as you know, we partnered with the Attorney General regarding the propane issue in northern New Mexico. Many folks were left without propane, and their vendors were unable to deliver it. And because of limitations in the contract for propane, these customers are limited. They can't seek propane supplies from other suppliers if their current supplier is unable to provide them. So I'm not going to get into any great detail, but just to let you know that the Attorney General is on this, is investigating it. Regulation and licensing got involved to ensure that some of these extreme cases of people that really need their propane got some propane in the interim. So I don't think we're quite out of the woods yet, but I really want to commend the Attorney General staff and the staff at Regulation and Licensing to assist us with this propane issue. And just as a side note, I think this really exposes maybe the lack of regulation of propane companies in New Mexico. So I'm very proud of kind of the team effort that we utilize to address this problem. And then, that's all I have. That's all I have. I do want to bring up the issue of rate decoupling. I know that we had an active case, and we, as I recall, had to designate a hearing examiner to evaluate legal threshold questions, but I don't know what the status is of that case. So maybe if Office of General Counsel can, within the next couple of weeks, give us an update on rate decoupling and maybe even shed some light on whether or not, we have the green light to initiate a rulemaking for rate decoupling. So anyway, I'd like that covered at either the next meeting or the meeting after that. And that's all I had. Any other matters from commissioners? All right, we're adjourned.
Great job, new chair. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
See you
Have a
guys.
good day. Bye.
Bye.